Welcome, Jeffrey. Good to have you in the podcast episode.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Cool
no
to be
problem,
there.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, let me start off a little bit about telling a little bit about how we met actually, because I think we know each other for about 3 years now.
Yeah, I think something like that. We actually met something like 3 years ago at ADE,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we met by email and probably also by phone.
Ah, yeah, through my
Maybe a
own
couple of
management,
months
right?
before that because I did mastering for you and things like that.
Yeah.
But we met in person, yeah, 3 years ago it was I think at
Yeah,
the
I think with
pop-up
ADE, yeah.
office.
And
Yeah,
it
yeah,
started because I always did my own mastering in the beginning,
yep,
and I was just missing that last 10% of the mixing and mastering of what I thought like, yeah, I'm not able to get that because yeah, mastering is like a completely different kind of thing, you know. It's not like
yeah,
making
true.
music or producing music. It's a different kind of job.
Yeah.
And I always managed to do a lot by myself, but you always took the record to the next level for me, which I really liked. And yeah,
Good to hear that.
we always stayed in touch. And now I
Yeah.
put my artist coaching clients to you if they need mastering or whatsoever. So yeah, I thought maybe it's nice. I always get a lot of questions about mastering. So I thought maybe it's nice to have a real master engineer in this episode just for once to get some clearance on how all these
Yeah.
things are happening and stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot of misunderstandings about what mastering actually is. A lot of people still confuse mixing and mastering as well. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
so yeah,
it's good to
what's
be
your
here.
experience on that? As in you're doing this full time or?
Yeah, I'm a full-time mastering engineer. Well, not full-time mastering because I'm also doing lectures for example, SAE
Mm-hmm.
and sound education, Albeda College.
Mm-hmm.
I will be teaching in about 2 weeks at the Herman Brood
Oh,
Academy.
really? I've been
So
doing a few guest college there as well,
yeah,
guest
yeah.
lessons.
So yeah, it's not just full-time mastering, but also these kind of things. And yeah, I'm also building my own equipment, and
Really?
sometimes I build equipment for other people as well.
Okay.
So and
So hardware equipment, as in,
hardware, yeah,
cool.
yeah, true, yeah. And yeah, a lot of equipment that I use in my studio, like most of it actually is built by myself or at least modified. So
Okay.
I don't like off-the-shelf equipment. If I hear something and I see something, I'm like, okay, it's cool, but I think if I change that, it could be even better. So I'm
Okay.
kind of nerdy when it comes to that.
Wow. Okay. And how did you get into this? As in, yeah, how old are you right now?
46.
46. And is it something
Yeah.
you already did when you were 20 years old, or was it something you wanted to do when you were 20 years old, or
You mean like building equipment and stuff, or
mastering?
mastering?
Yeah, mastering in general.
Mastering itself, I never had plans to be a mastering engineer. It just happened.
Mm-hmm.
As you probably know, I made a lot of music myself, mostly techno, in the beginning of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was something like 1997 or 98 when I was going to release an album.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I attended the mastering session because, yeah, I just wanted to be there. Because I had some things I wanted to take care of, her fades and crossovers and some particular things in sound. So I went down to the mastering studio, and I was like, okay, this is cool. And so I started messing with some plugins because Waves was already there, and you could do some things with Waves
Like the
plugins.
real table or the plugins?
The plugins, yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Waves is it's pretty old already. It sucks, by the way, but that's a different
Really?
story. Yeah, I think so. But
Okay.
most of plugins.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I started messing with the plugins, and I soon found out that what I was doing, I could change the sound, but not make it any better. So in the beginning, it was more like I had no idea what I was doing. But then it started to grow, and I had friends in the music business, and so they asked me to do their mastering, and it simply started to grow and got bigger and bigger, and I got more
By
mastering
accident,
jobs.
actually, or was it a plan that
Yeah,
you
by
were?
accident. No, no,
Okay.
no, no. I didn't plan it. I just started, and yeah, that was something like at the beginning of the end of the 90s. So
Okay.
1998, 99, I think.
And you know, I always wondered because I'm a bit younger than you. I got into this industry when software was normal. But how did you
Yeah,
experience the transition from needing a really big, expensive studio to going to this time where everything is available on the internet, where all the plugins are
yeah,
available? Plugins are getting better, software is getting better. Like,
yeah.
what's your opinion on that?
Um, the thing is, with mastering, you're working on you have a 95% perfect mix or a 90% perfect mix, and you want to bring it to 100%.
Yeah.
And I think with plugins, because you're working on the last 5 or 10%, I think with plugins you can go there to 99.5%, but I think that last 0.5% is still in the hardware most of the times. There is something about hardware which simply cannot be replaced right now.
Recreated, actually,
plugins.
like digitally recreated. It's impossible.
Yeah. It's the same with, for instance, I'm not sure if you can see it, but this compressor here is a tube compressor. It's a really big, bulky compressor. But just when you pass the audio through it, it sounds bigger. It sounds better. There's something happening. It's not like you can explain what is happening, but something is happening there.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. But that's what I tried to say as well when I delivered my tracks to you. Like, I always got my tracks to like 90% and felt like, okay, it's doing the job. You know, it sounds well. It has the energy. It has the bass. It has the highs. But when I got my master back from you, I always had something like, I really can't explain what happened, but something happened, you know, like something there's life in the track, like it starts living, it gets some extra layers or something. And another thing that I always was one big question mark to me is, it always seemed like my stereo image got wider.
Could be that I made it a bit wider, depending on the track, of course. But sometimes, for instance, when you use analog EQ or an analog compressor, it gets more 3D. Not particularly wider, but it gets more 3D.
Yeah, like there's more depth.
You don't even have to
mix.
make it more wide. Yeah, because if it's too wide, for instance, if you have a track with vocals and the vocals are mostly in the center, in the middle, if you make it really wide, what happens to the vocals? The vocals get buried in the mix. So. That's not something you want. But in this case, with analog, you can make it more 3D, more open, more things fall into place, and it sounds more wide, it sounds more open, but it's still the same witness.
I guess that's the thing I experienced as well. Like, it got me. I felt like I had a deeper mix. You know, like all the elements I placed. Sounded better in their place, because I always had problems with my stereo imaging, because I didn't really knew how to do that perfectly. And when I got my track back from you, I always had something like, wow, this is something I should have done, but you did it for me. So thanks.
It's partly it's the analog chain, and partly it's mostly it's the experience. It's if I sometimes compare it to, let's say, Max Verstappen. If you put Max Verstappen in a Volkswagen Golf and you put me in his car, trust me, Max Verstappen will drive circles around me, because it's not the equipment, it's not the studio, it's the person behind it. But it's also the studio, because in my case it's partly the analog equipment, but the most important part is how your room itself sounds. And not just the monitoring, but the room itself. You can see some.
I see one of those acoustic plates on the back
and things like that. There's like a lot of acoustical treatment, all measured, and I have. You can see it back there, like those bass straps. They are calculated just for my room itself. They're handmade by Gig Acoustics from the UK, America, where they're all over the world.
And can you explain a little bit more, because I know why it's so important, but a lot of people think that if they buy the expensive I don't even know expensive speakers on earth, everything should be right in the end, but the room actually decides how good your speakers will perform.
It's even more important, because with really good speakers like the BMWs that I'm using, they really go down to 20 hertz. I can play a 10 hertz tone even, and you don't hear it, but you just feel the pressure and things like that. But the lower your speakers go, the more acoustical treatment you need, because the lower the frequency is, the more problems you will have, and the bigger, the bulkier the acoustical treatment should be.
Wow, okay.
And with near field monitors, you're literally sitting in the sound field, because the name says it all. It's near field.
In this
case, it's more like main field monitors. You can see it from here. The speakers that you can see behind me, the black ones.
Are those like? Are they on a pole, or is the yellow part the only thing?
No, they're from floor to what you see
Oh,
there.
wow.
They
Okay.
weigh 80 kilos each, and there's a block of concrete beneath it, which is 60 kilos. So it's 140 kilos per side.
Wow.
And I'm sitting something like 2 meters, 2.5 meters away from the speakers themselves, which is completely different than near field monitors.
Yeah.
With near field monitors, you're just you're part of the mix, and in this case with mastering, you're sitting a bit further away from it so that you can hear the sound field and actually hear what is going on.
I can actually still remember when I set foot in a professional studio for the first time, because I was always making music in my bedroom, like shitty room. I had some good speakers, but the room was shit. And I set foot in a professional studio, like a professionally built studio, and I was amazed by the sound. I listened to my own tracks on the speakers, and I was thinking like, wow, this isn't my track. It sounded so completely different.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And it's so amazing what the acoustic treatment can do to your track, actually.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, if you, for instance, you have a problem at, let's say, 50 hertz, which is basically the fundamentals of a 909 bass drum, and if you have a problem there, no matter if it's a peak or a dip, depending on how your room is, what you will always do, you will try to compensate in your mix. If you have
you will start
50
pushing.
hertz, you will try pushing it more.
Yeah.
If you have a boost there, you will try dipping it, and the bass drum will be buried a bit in the mix. And that's the thing with a proper mastering studio, is that it's not 100% flat. That's not even possible, and it doesn't even sound great when it's completely flat. But at least it's cohesive. It's all frequencies are there. It's not like there's a big dip, there's a big peak, and things like that. And that's something you want for mastering. You don't want a room with peaks and dips, because you will, no matter how, you will always compensate for your room then, and that's not something you want.
Yeah, I always compare mastering. Like, a lot of my clients always ask me, like, I want to learn how to mix and to master, but I always warn them, as in, know what you're getting into, because it's just science, in my opinion. It actually it has nothing to do with creating music, because creating music is like a creative process to me. And doing the mastering is like peaks and frequencies and minus and plus, and it's just
but really small steps. That's one of the
really small steps.
Confusions that a lot of people have, is that mastering is about making big steps and changing the sound all the time.
No, it's like smoothing.
Like sometimes I'm boosting or cutting a frequency like maybe half a dB. Sometimes I'm not doing anything. I'm just using a small EQ to balance things a bit out and just use a limiter. Because I also do pop music, rock music, and then you're working with really well-known and really great mixing engineers. And sometimes I don't do anything.
Yeah.
And a bad mastering engineer will change the sound because he thinks that the sound should be changed because the customer is paying for that. No, the customer is paying you to make sure that it sounds great everywhere, and that
even better.
It's kind of like if you're writing a book, there's always a copywriter after that.
Yeah.
Could be that you have some spelling mistakes or some grammatical things like that, and the copywriter takes care of those kind of things. But if you wrote a book and the book is perfect, then the copywriter has an easy job, but he still has to read it through, because it could be that there's still a tiny mistake or something like that. It could be that he's changing some parts of the text so that it fits better on the page and things like that.
Just minor changes, actually.
Yeah. So.
Okay, and so going back to the question, actually, as in hardware versus software, you still believe in the hardware part because it does something with the sound you just really can't explain.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I also use a lot of plugins.
Which ones?
I'm one of the beta testers for Fab Filters, so I'm a bit biased maybe, but I'm using all of the Fab Filter plugins.
I like them as well.
But I also use Ozone. Ozone is pretty good if you know how to work with it.
The latest one?
I just bought Ozone 8 Advanced this week. In the beginning, I was like a bit skeptical because it had all those automated things. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That's not something I want because simply it doesn't work. But the plugins themselves could be good. Yeah. You have to be really careful. There's a lot of things in Ozone which you should be careful about. With the EQ, it's decent. It's okay. It's an okay EQ. But for instance, the exciter which is built in, it sucks. It simply sucks.
Okay.
It really messes up the sound. the maximizer, the limiter, it's pretty good if you know how to work with it. It
Don't
has
push it too much, probably.
if you push it too much, you really
Yeah.
get that ozone zing, ozone sound, which is better in version 8, by the way. That's the reason I also bought it. But still, if you push it too far and not knowing what to do, it gets that ozone sound,
Yeah.
and I'm not
taking
sure if that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, a lot of beginners use the ozone because it's just
Yeah,
easy to work with. Lots of presets.
yeah.
Would you recommend working with presets?
No, no. First of all, yeah, I also have presets, by the way, but it's mostly a preset with a certain chain. Like I always start off with, in my case, most of the times I start off with the Pro Q2, the EQ, and sometimes I don't even use it as an EQ, but I use it as a gain knob for
Really?
going to my analog chain, because after that I go to my analog chain and sometimes I want to push it a bit more into the analog chain. Then it goes through my analog chain, and it really depends on what type of music I'm doing, what I want to achieve. So it really depends. I can simply push a couple of buttons and it's a completely different setup, different compressors, different EQs and things like that. And then I go back into the computer and then I use plugins, and then it really depends on what I'm using. But the presets that I have is basically a set of plugins in a row with the hardware inserted as well. And that's my starting point then.
Okay.
But it's not like I already have an EQ setting there or a compressor setting or something like that.
It's
No,
just the
everything
chain,
is
yeah.
flat. It's just the chain and nothing else. So
Okay.
that really works.
And I wanted to get your opinion on something else as well, which I've seen, I think, a month ago. I was on Facebook scrolling down my timeline, and I probably got targeted by the company. I can't remember the name, but maybe you know it. But they offer like an online mastering tool. So you just send your track to them, pay like 20 euros. They just ran it through some kind of mastering tool, and you instantly get back.
Probably mean Lander.
Yeah, I think it was Lander. Yeah. Like what? I didn't check it, so I don't really have an opinion on it. But it seemed really hard for me to believe that was an option to get a cool master.
No, the thing is with Lander, it could be a pretty decent sounding master. Let's face it, simple as that. It could be a decent sounding master if your mix is basically what the algorithm wants it to sound like.
Okay.
So it could be that your mix is good for the algorithm and it sounds great afterwards. Could sometimes even be better than what a mastering engineer does. Simple as that. But the thing is, with mastering, it's a second opinion as well. So sometimes I get mixes in advance because they're not certain about the mix. Like, okay, could you please check the mix because you have been working on it really long and you have no idea what you're doing in the end. Like, is the hi-hat high and loud enough, or is it maybe too loud or whatever? And then the mastering engineer is the second opinion, which means I'm giving feedback on the mix. Like, okay, I think it's a good idea to boost the hi-hat a bit more, turn the vocals a bit down, and I think the bass drum and the bass drum are a bit fighting, and things like that. So you can change the mix. With Blender, it simply doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Because
it's just the pattern they deliver, and that's it.
With analyzers, and it simply puts some plugins on top, and that's it.
Okay.
And for instance, if you have a synthesizer line which is pointing out a bit, which is the element of the track which you want to point out, and if you look at the analyzer, you also see a peak at whatever 2 kilohertz. A mastering engineer will not make that a flat line so that it's flat, but Lander, for example, sees those peaks as a problem and simply turns it down.
Yeah, and kill it. Okay.
And kill it.
Yeah.
So the thing with mastering is you want something to actually listen to the music and know and do something with it and give you feedback, and that's not something you can have with Lander or some other automated.
Yeah. And that's the thing with mixing as well. Like I always, when I have clients and they ask me about mixing, a lot of them say like, yeah, but I have these meters, I just have a look at the meters, see what's happening, and I adjust to that. But I always say like, no, keep on listening, like meters will tell you something different than what you will hear in the end. So of course it's good to check them every now and then to see if you're missing out on things. But the overall, to me, is just like, it's music, it's sound, and it should be sounding well.
You should use your ears all the time.
Yeah.
And that's also the cool thing about analog equipment. If I'm tweaking a parameter like EQ or compressor or something like that, I don't look at what I'm doing. I'm just doing and tweaking the knobs, and afterwards I'm like, oh, I thought I would be cutting that frequency, but instead it's that frequency, for instance.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing. And I'm not sure if you know the knob control.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
It's kind of like it's basically a mouse. It's a big knob, and since I have that, I have it for almost a year now, I think. And since that, I started listening more to the music as well when I'm using plugins. But because no matter what, if you're using a mouse to change a parameter of a plugin, you're always looking at the screen and you're not listening. You're at least
and now you can turn back and just turn the knob.
Yeah, I just turn the knob and I just listen.
Yeah,
and
great.
I'm surprised that I cut or boosted a certain frequency because I thought that the problem would be there or things like that. And it really works wonders. So
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, use your ears, not your eyes.
Yeah,
always.
that's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what to you, like you see different tracks every day. You get a lot of requests from people to master the tracks. You hear different kind of genres. What's the most frequently made mistake in your opinion?
When it comes to delivering files?
Yeah, you know, both like delivering files or just in overall mixes, you know?
First of all, when people deliver the files, sometimes they send in mixes with a limiter on top already. And really my hands are tied then, because if there's a limiter on top, there's hardly anything you can do about it because it's already flat and it simply doesn't work that way. And some people are like mixing with a limiter on top of their master bus. And sure, it's easier to make a decent mix, but in the end, if you switch off the limiter, your mix will probably fall apart and you have to do the mix again. And there's a reason for that, because the mix itself is not finished yet. If you do a mix without a limiter, I think your mix will always be better. No matter what, it will always sound better.
Is it because of the dynamics?
Yeah, because of the dynamics, and it will sound better simply like that. Yeah. So and then in the end, you can try to see what it sounds like with a limiter on top, and you will soon find out that the mix is better.
Yeah.
Because the mix is already good and the limiter, makes it louder, but the mix itself will always be better without a limiter on top.
And takes out the dynamics, and that's the same. That's the thing I don't like in most EDM tracks. There's no dynamics at all. You know, the break is as loud as the drop.
As loud as yeah. That's also one of the things that a lot of homemade mastering engineers do, is that they use just one limiter, and most of the times they use ozone, which has a zing, a certain sound, which I just explained, and they simply push the limiter too much because their mix is not good, and then they have to push it too much, and then it sounds like one flat line, and it's all life is sucked out of it. But if you mix without that limiter on top, your track will be more dynamic, and then you also have to push the limiter less loud than with mixing with the limiter on top from the beginning.
Okay, and so that's about the delivering part, but is it also like a common mistake you see often with just the mix overall?
One of the mistakes, especially in dance music, is that they don't make their bass drums loud enough, or the bass drum, the bass line are in the same frequency ballpark, and the bass drum is buried in the bass line. So the bass drum in dance music should always be on top.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to make your bass drum loud. It's better to have your bass drum too loud than not loud enough, because if a bass drum is too loud, the mastering engineer can simply turn it down a tiny bit. But if it's really buried in the mix, it's really hard to
you can't put it up.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that happens quite a lot, that the bass drum is not loud enough.
Yeah, and I think that's important because it's like dance music, you know, there has to be a standard, like the rhythm should be in the middle of the mix.
Yeah.
Okay, so
what also happens a lot is that people don't check their mix in mono. So they make a really wide synthesizer line with a lot of choruses and things like that on top of each other. And but when you play it back in mono, it could be that the synthesizer line is totally cancelled because of phase cancellations and things like that.
And why should you check it in mono?
People think that mono is not really important, but you used to be a DJ. Did you know that on the DJM 800 and 600 that there's a mono stereo switch on top of the mixer?
Yeah, I saw it. I never used it, but I saw it.
Yeah, but did you check before you started your set?
No, never.
No,
I just started. But I do
nobody
know that a
does.
lot of clubs have mono sound.
Yeah, true. It could be that switch is set to mono, so
Hmm.
you already have a mono signal. But
Hmm.
a lot of clips also have their PA set on purpose in mono because if you're standing in the left side of the room and something's happening on the right side of the speakers, you don't hear that sound.
Yeah,
So what they do, they make it completely mono or a bit more
yeah,
mono. So it's still stereo, but way
yeah.
less stereo. So there you go. With your really wide synthesizer line, and when it's played back in the club, there is no synthesizer
Everything
line.
disappears. Yeah.
So mono is really important. Always
Okay.
check back in mono to see if it's uh,
As
it's
powerful, actually.
still powerful. Sure, you will hear a difference in sound.
Hmm.
That will always be the case because you have stereo and you have mono. It's two
Hmm.
different things. But still, there's a difference between sounds collapsing, sounds fading away, or just being there and maybe a tiny bit less loud. So
Yeah.
be careful with those kind of things.
Great.
Always check in mono.
Great one. Great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to end off with a tip that is useful to every producer. A simple tip could be a plugin, could be anything, but something that's really easy to use and that will increase your mix instantly. So let's say it's a plugin that you have to add,
Yeah.
or
Now, well, it's not really a plugin because, like what I said in the beginning, it's not the tools that makes the
hmm,
right music, but it's basically less is more. A lot of people are like pushing things like 10 plugins on one sound and another sound which has 12 plugins and things like that. But the sound itself, the basic sound should already be good. So
okay,
no matter how all plugins, all hardware that you're using, always keep in mind that you're degrading the sound. So the more plugins you have on top of each other,
hmm,
the more you're degrading the sound. The sound itself should already be good. So start with the source. The source
yeah,
should be good and work
actually,
from
yeah,
that.
the source
Yeah.
sound has to be good already, and you just need
Yeah.
to adjust it a little bit, but not too much.
No,
Okay,
maybe a
well,
tiny bit of EQ, maybe a tiny bit of compression, but it's
hmm,
not like you always need compression. You always need EQ. No, if it sounds good, leave it that way.
cool.
It that yeah,
I'm a big believer.
will
Like
always
that's
sound
the
better.
way I always I learned it that way as well,
Yeah,
and I always work that way as well. But it's the same with using tracks in your process. I only had like 15 to 20 tracks, and
yeah,
some people work with 80 tracks. And I always ask them like, why would you need 80 tracks? You know, like you could do this within five tracks instead of
yeah.
20.
Yeah. The
Um,
funny thing is that when I made music myself, I released a track. I think it was in '97 or '98.
mhm.
Not sure. But that track was called Six Sounds.
And it was really
So it
6 tracks.
basically had six sounds,
Wow.
and it was on a lot of compilation CDs as well. And it
Okay.
had six channels in total, nothing more.
Yeah, it's just less is more. I really believe in that as well. Like
Yeah.
the less is in your mix, the cleaner it sounds, the more open it sounds.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big believer as well.
that's good.
Yeah. So thanks again. Like I heard a lot of inspirational and yeah, a lot of stuff that I didn't knew about, and probably everyone who's listening really didn't knew about or whatsoever.
That's good to hear.
So thanks for the tips.
You're welcome.
If someone's interested in your mastering, yeah, mastering, how do you call that?
Mastering
Services.
studio, mastering services.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mastering services. Where could they find you? Like, do you have a website or whatsoever?
Yeah. My name is Jeffrey de Gans, and the website that I have is dagoosmusic.nl.
Okay,
Or
awesome.
otherwise, just Google for Dagoose mastering or
Yeah,
something like that. You will
awesome.
always end up at my
And
site.
you definitely
Or
have my recommendation. As I said, he always did my mastering as well, and I'm referring him to a lot of people that I know who are experiencing having troubles with mastering. So if you're looking for mastering, this is the guy. Look it out. Have a look out for
thanks.
him.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay. Take care.